Awesome. Yeah, so my name is Andres. I'm a research scientist at Snap. And today I wanted to chat with you about a project that I worked on before Snap when I was at Microsoft Research. And it's on this topic of hybrid AI in the workplace, which I thought was relevant to the topic of this panel. So when we started this project, just to give you an idea where we were coming from, we were really interested in understanding in the workplace what are the kinds of things or the kinds of tasks people wish they could delegate to somebody else. Like if they had an admin, for example, like some executives have, what will people want to delegate? And we reach out to about 100 people from different kinds of industries, but all of them kind of information worker type people. So like from CFOs to designers, engineers, all sorts of people. And one of the things that came up as one of the key things that people wish they could delegate was scheduling meetings. And you probably are all familiar with the challenges of scheduling a meeting, which typically goes like something like this, like you will get an email from somebody. In this case, was from one of our students that work with us on this project. So we will get an email like that, and it will be like, "Hey, it was great meeting you. I would love to chat with you about, in this case, potential internships." And so what you do when somebody asks you to meet, typically you go back to your calendar. So you switch applications. You may be on your phone, so you may check your calendar on your phone app, or whatever you wanna look into, and then you will reply and say, "Sure, I'm happy to meet. How about this week, after 10:30 and before noon?" So that work. And then the other person may be like, "Oh, actually, that week is busy for me." And so then you go on and on, then you open your calendar again and you're like, "Okay, what about the following week?" And then you may add that meeting finally if you agree on in a time. So all of that is a challenge that we all encounter with scaling meetings, and that's exactly what we were trying to address.
Hey, Andres,
And
I'm going to interrupt
yes.
you for 1 second. It doesn't look like your slides are advancing on our end here. Could you maybe
Oh,
try to go back? You see them changing. Ah, there we go.
oh, I
That's
see.
good.
So what did you miss? Did you miss everything?
Yeah, we saw the first slide.
Okay. Well, so I guess you are pretty familiar with that, challenges of scaling meetings back and forth and sending emails and so on. And so what we did is we built this scheduling bot. And what was really cool about this bot is that it worked without you having to install any extra application. You simply CC your assistant, your AI assistant, on any email conversation where you wanted to meet with somebody. So like the example that I was describing before that you didn't see the screens, but all that back and forth will be eliminated by simply CCing this assistant, which is not new for those people who do have an assistant, but in this case, we wanted to enable anyone to have this sort of conversational assistant for scheduling meetings. And so then the same scenario that I described before, the way it will work is, let's say, I will send that email to the person that I wanted to meet and CC the assistant. And then from then on, I will be not included in the emails that are all about trying to schedule that meeting. So it wouldn't cover my inbox, and it will be all a direct conversation between the assistant and the other person that I wanted to meet. And so in this case, the assistant will send an email like this one to Rafael, who is the person I wanted to meet, and it will offer a few times for us to meet based on my calendar, because the assistant has access to my calendar. And then eventually, Rafael, this person will reply back. They didn't have to install anything special. They will reply with simple text, like natural language text, right in their email, no extra applications. So they could go back and forth many times if they want, until they find a time. And then eventually the assistant will send the meeting schedule with a link to video conference call, or all these things that happen automatically. And so that was kind of the goal of this. And we wanted to be able to handle a variety of complex scenarios, not just one-to-one meetings, but like multiple people in multiple organizations. In some cases, the assistant may have access to some people's calendars, not others, etc. So it should really work like a person, essentially. That was our kind of gold standard. So this is hard for many reasons. There is a long history of AI assistants in the research community, some of them even for scheduling. But none of this early work has taken off yet. And there's a few reasons why. One is that there is very low tolerance for error, especially in business scenarios. we need really 100% or near 100% accuracy. Otherwise, you just discard this kind of bots. You probably have the experience of trying to tell Siri or Alexa something, and if it doesn't work the first time, even if it improves later, you'll never try again. It's just the kind of thing that you don't want to keep trying. That's one challenge. The other challenge is that it's the cold start problem. Like AI, like the one I described, needs data for training the algorithms, but data requires usage. So then you're in this kind of chicken and egg problem. How are you going to collect data if your system doesn't work? And vice versa, why people will use the system if it doesn't work. So there's this challenge there. And the other one is the scheduling is really hard. So there's a long tail of scenarios and behaviors that each particular role, like maybe if you're a real estate agent, is different from being a recruiter versus being a designer. All of these scenarios are kind of unique to each role. So it's a long tail of possibilities. And so we came up with this new infrastructure for solving this problem from day one. And we call it the hybrid AI design, where it involves humans in the loop in the process of this scheduling. So I'll just give you a high level view of this. So the tier one of this model is that we do have some automation that tries to understand what people are saying, tries to look at the availability in people's calendars. But we know that's not perfect, and it's not going to be perfect until we have a lot of data and a lot of usage. And so we have the second tier, which we call microtasking, where if something fails or if the system is not certain about something, rather than saying, sorry, I don't understand, can you say that again, or something like that, what you probably see with Siri or Alexa or other things, instead of that, it will escalate that to a human who will be able to respond to small tasks that we call microtasks that are essentially about extracting the kinds of knowledge or the kinds of understanding from, say, the emails in this case, and we'll try to essentially help the automatic part to complete the task at hand. But this was all done through this very well constructed and super templatized task that I'll show you in a second. But then that data will essentially feed back into the automation. But even these two tiers were not enough, because as I was saying, there are some cases where even the ways these microtasks were designed were not designed with thinking of a new scenario. And so we had this third tier where we had actual experts, essentially people who are admins who schedule meetings for a living, who will intervene in the whole system and take over when needed. And so this is like, if you think about the automation of cars, there is like the complete self-driving car, there is the like cruise control, and then there is like you take over and you just drive, that sort of thing. But the idea is that every time any of these things, any of the escalations will happen, that any of the humans will be involved, we will be collecting data that eventually, after many or a few of these scenarios, will be automated. So it will improve the system over time. And so the way these microtasks work, for example, these are self-contained tasks that take maybe 10 to 30 seconds to complete. They're designed to be automatable. So the idea here is most of them have multiple choice answers. So like, you will get the context of an email, the content of an email, and then you as a human will be asked, is this about a meeting in person or is this about a meeting remote, for example? That's the only thing that the system was not certain about, and that's where the human will intervene. But there was also the option to say, I cannot answer. You will push a red button, and in this case, it will escalate to this macro worker. And then the macro is really taking over the whole thing. And this task will typically take 5 to 10 minutes to complete, and it will take the expertise of somebody who is familiar with scheduling meetings and doing it in a very professional way. So this is the kind of the whole system composed of these three pieces: microtask, macrotask, and the automation. And over time, the goal was to automate more and more. So today, the project actually continues. I'm no longer working on this project. It was called Calendar.help at the time. Now it's called Microsoft Scheduler. And from what I hear, about 70% of the microtasks are now automated. There's a bunch of people who have mentioned and talk about how they use it, how the challenges they may have, or things they like about it. So like this person, for example, says, I've used Calendar.help since the beginning. I started in private preview, and it's very impressive, whatever. One of the things that I enjoy watching is this interview of this woman who is a famous reporter who often reports on Microsoft products, who is not always the most positive about these products, but she had something interesting to say. So I'll play this 1 minute clip and then I'll open it up.
Andres, we don't hear her. I think maybe their audio on her is.
I'm sorry, can you not hear?
Yeah, we can't hear her video.
Oh, oh, okay. Well, I'll skip that. She just describes how she uses calendar help and the fun and some of the challenges with it. So actually this is a summary of some of the limitations of this approach and some of the things that I think are that speak to the issues that we'll start seeing as these type of systems start to permeate through the workplace. So one is on the system itself, and this just speaks to this particular scenario, but I think you can generalize some of these things to other scenarios of beyond meetings. That there is a certain amount of friction for invitees in having to work with an assistant. And this friction is not necessarily extra work that you wouldn't have to do if it was just two humans. But for some people, as you can imagine, being kind of in some ways put to talk to an assistant feels like a downgrade. Like, oh, why am I not so important to be able to, just schedule the meeting with you? Why do I have to work with your assistant? So that's always a challenge. And so it may not work in some scenarios. The other one is the complexity of meetings, as I was saying. When there is many invitees, let's say 100 people or even 50 people, it's really difficult to converge. And so in those cases, you may never be able to do it with an assistant or with any system, maybe. And then the other one is with the method of using hybrid intelligence, like these combinations of humans plus AI, that over time, these workflows become more complex and more complex. And so it's difficult to design and maintain and debug. And so, this may vary from scenario to scenario. The other one is the cost of having people in the loop. So, the dream of a lot of people who are in the AI business is to have everything automatic, right? But the reality is that most of the things that you think are automatic, even from things like community moderation on something like Facebook or things like that, all the way to even self-driving cars. Sometimes they have humans in the loops, but that is costly. And so how to allocate the right resources for that. And the other one is around labor dynamics, and there's all these discussions around the Uberification of the workplace, like how are we becoming controlled by an algorithm, and maybe we don't have if you're an Uber driver or a task rabbiter or something like this, you may not have the same protections that you used to have if you had a full-time employment with a company. And so there's a lot of challenges there that need to be addressed. In the case of this particular project, we were using a vendor that was approved by our company, and it went through all this process of vetting and assessing that they follow certain labor practices. But still, that's always something in our minds that we need to be conscious about. And the other one is around privacy implications. There's been a lot of scandals that you've probably seen in the news about, like, somebody in Amazon maybe hearing the conversations that you have with Alexa for the purpose of improving their system. And so we were trying to be very transparent throughout this project that there's humans in the loop, and in fact we sold that as a thing that was an added value. The reason why it works so well is because there's humans in the loop. But people may not always read everything, and they may forget or whatever. So that's always something that is challenging about this hybrid AI model. And there's certainly certain scenarios, like maybe the medical scenarios, that may never work. So yeah, that's kind of where I wanted to leave the conversation, and happy to chat.